because people will look at the roster. They'll look at this depth chart here and they'll go, well, they just got Pickens and Lamb. And of course, Prescott's going to be healthy. Ferguson's back. Oh, they're just going to be chucking it. It's going to be, 50 passes a game. How do you think that's going to work? And do you think Adams was brought in here to help out the run game? What's your best take?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, first of all, to, follow any kind of breadcrumbs with Schottenheimer because he's been the offensive coordinator here for 2 years, didn't call plays. He had a cup of coffee with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, things were very volatile there, so kind of difficult to discern. Was a play caller with the Seattle Seahawks. That's something he talks about a lot.
Yeah.
But was kind of butting heads with Russell Wilson in the let Russ cook era, etc. But is a disciple of Pete Carroll, who obviously loved to run the ball. And better than I do his time with the New York Jets.
Yeah.
In the run to the conference championships they had. LaDainian Tomlinson, Sean Green.
Thomas Jones.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So just this kind of amalgamation of people and contributors. So it stands to reason that they want to do that. But very oftentimes I think we look at a team in free agency in the offseason and say like, well, these are their moves, and they clearly represent what they want to do. If the Cowboys had gone out and signed a bunch of interior linemen, or if they had been the biggest spender at running back, or if they drafted a running back even with a top 100 pick, we would sit here and we would say, yeah, that makes sense. And I actually hearken back to something Mike McCarthy said in 2023, which was at the NFL Combine right after the Cowboys had moved on from Kellen Moore, and Mike had announced he was going to take over play calling duties. If you recall, he had a quote that was something, I'm paraphrasing, but something along the lines of, Kellen just wants to light up the scoreboard. I want to run the ball. And everybody just freaked out and assumed that Mike was going to go back to like, the wishbone and just like this archaic, running the ball 50 times a game. And this dude is not in no way a modern coach, blah, blah, blah. Only for us to get to the 23 season and for Dak Prescott to finish second in MVP voting and for CeeDee Lamb to, set every individual receiving record in Dallas Cowboys franchise history. So I don't know that Schottenheimer is bluffing, but, the math doesn't necessarily make sense because we mentioned the crew that the Jets had going on when he was there under Rex Ryan. I mean, with all due respect, I don't think Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders and Jaden Blue, kind of match up. Even if we disregard who LaDainian Tomlinson is and was as a player, this is a very, kind of ho-hum, running back room. And so like if you had to guess right now who leads the team in carries or production, I don't think you could. I mean, I think we'd probably go like Javonte or Miles Sanders just because, but so it's difficult to feel like they're going to just run the ball at will. I think they want to obviously have a semblance of a run game, but the Cowboys have just, they were on one end of the spectrum, spending the 4th overall pick and doubling down with the Zeke contract, and then went to the other end of the spectrum as far as devotion to the running back position. The position doesn't matter. I know the internet feels that way, but it does a little bit. You have to care about it a teeny amount. And the Cowboys still aren't devoting quite enough resources there, in my opinion, but maybe they're banking on the pass game, being so efficient with the addition of George Pickens that it opens things up for whoever's running the ball.
And they did draft Booker. And that also tends to think that is more of we're going to try to ground and pound a little bit.
That's the one thing. You're right. I mean, certainly, but they did also see Zach Martin retire, right?
Sure.
I mean, so there is a bit of, I mean, there is some of that there. I have a very difficult time, discerning where this run game production is going.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Sanders is intriguing because up until this last year there with Carolina, which was such a big disappointment, I kind of liked what I saw out of him out of college and into the pros, and he had the big year with the Eagles, and I thought everything was going really fine for him. And then I don't know what happened in Carolina, but then again, a lot of bad happened in Carolina that year as well, even though, of course, last year things did start to get better. I get that. And maybe when you get a big contract for the first time, there's that. So he is the one that intrigues me the most because I can see a bounce back from Sanders because I didn't really look at him as some sort of Williams hasn't shown us anything in the NFL. At least Sanders has shown us something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm way more willing to believe, and I think you are too, that Sanders, had the benefit of running behind the Eagles offensive line that we know to be great. But certainly talented, even back to your point in his days at Penn State.
Yep.
Javonte Williams may be involved in the passing game. I don't know. it's, the Cowboys have a lot of fans, and so you get a lot of different types of people. There's obviously a big Venn diagram that captures Cowboys fans with Texas Longhorn fans. So you have a
Of
lot of people
course.
who just really believe that Jaden Blue is gonna, be the guy. And
Sure.
I certainly think he'll be involved to some degree, but he just doesn't have the physical frame. Obviously, and we've seen that play out with Deuce Vaughn, obviously. Phil Maffa is intriguing to me, obviously a bigger back, and certainly had a lot of production at Clemson. But again, I mean, if you told me one of these dudes carries the ball 200 times this year, I just don't know who that is right now.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to predict.
Probably would have to do with injuries if that's going to happen.
Right.
Otherwise, that probably won't. Okay. So, sticking on offense, let's talk about, and I'll ask you the same questions here on defense. So, what about give us a good camp battle on offense that we need to keep an eye on? Cowboy fans out there going to training camp, and what should they be keeping an eye on?
I don't think there's anything super sexy, right? Like, I think it's pretty chalk at the top, but I think things that are interesting that I'll be paying attention to at least are Luke Schoonmaker, second round pick a couple years ago out of Michigan. I know you're a big fan.
Yes.
Just it hasn't hit
Nope.
for the Cowboys, and Jake Ferguson is kind of that dude, so there's not really room for that. And Brevin Spann-Ford is a name that has just kind of popped and floated at different times. He had one of the biggest UDFA signing bonuses last year across the NFL. That's the one area where the Cowboys will, open the purse strings is an undrafted free agency and bid for guys. And so it was very clear and obvious that they really, really valued Brevin Spann-Ford. And so is he able to leapfrog Luke Schoonmaker, become a viable part of things? I don't know, but that is a point of interest for me. And also, I think it's safe to assume the Cowboys call it 6 receivers, right? So we've got CD, Pickens, Jalen Tolbert. There's 3. Kevontae Turpin, if you want to count him, we're now at 4. And it gets a little bit interesting here because Ryan Flournoy was a draft pick last year. Jalen Brooks was a draft pick 2 years ago. Okay, like maybe that's one of your other spots. Now we're up to 5. There is some question. I think people wonder, is Jonathan Mingo's spot totally safe? I mean, we forget, but this is his first training camp with the Cowboys.
Yeah.
And been acquired at the deadline last year. So
that's a valuable pick too.
I mean, believe me, we're well aware.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, like before the George Pickens trade, obviously it was, like he's going to make the team just from a quantitative standpoint. But I mean, I don't know that I feel, I went from like 100% guarantee makes the team, maybe down to like 85, which is still significant, but it at least invited questions. If somebody is able to pop, Treshaun Holden is a UDFA that has gotten some buzz as well. Like, is there, my point is, I don't think you have to squint like with all of your might to see a world where Jonathan Mingo is cut by the team. I don't think that they're that bold, to be clear. Like that they're pretty arrogant and pretty stubborn. So I think they'll hold to the fact that they traded for him, but it is worth mentioning at least.
Okay. And what about Brooks? I mean, does Brooks have the talent from what you saw last year, which was a, second year from a rookie. So is he ready now? Do you think there's a chance that he could have a really good camp and then maybe try to win that 4th job?
I think that Brooks is a talented receiver, but I think he is kind of fallen into the same trap that plagued Jalen Tolbert. Tolbert was drafted in 2022, obviously like a month after the Cowboys traded away Amari Cooper. And so he came in and it was a matter of, we need you to be this guy. And it just was incredibly unfair to ask of him. And so it didn't work that rookie season in 2022. And then in 2023, his second year, they traded for Brandon Cooks. And so that relegated him down to this 3rd tertiary role where he kind of thrived a little bit more. And last year with Cooks dealing with injuries, he was asked to kind of, carry the load, become that secondary guy. And in his 3rd NFL season, that was a fair question. But he just couldn't do it. And Brandon Cooks was injured. And so obviously the Cowboys were stuck, traded for Mingo. That didn't work, et cetera. Now we're here. So I think that that's kind of happened with Jalen Brooks. Last year, he was kind of asked to be that 3rd guy with Brandon Cooks dealing with injuries. And then with Tolbert not really living up to anything. And I think he's a serviceable player. I just don't know that he's quite ready for that responsibility. Okay. And so, is time running out? He's a 7th round pick from 2 years ago now.
Yeah, it is.
That new car smell does, fade away after a certain time.
And that's why you bring in guys like Holden, and maybe if he has a good camp and Brooks is not developing, it's time to move on.
Right.
What about the offensive line? Is it set for sure? Does Cornelius have a chance at all? Are there any questions regarding jobs on the offensive line, either as a starter or as a key reserve?
Nothing in my mind. It all is pretty chalk, especially after drafting Tyler Booker. The only thing that I'm going to pay a modicum of attention to is at one point, I believe it was during the draft, right after the draft, Schottenheimer, it was after the draft, was fielding a question about Tyler Booker not, getting every snap with the ones, and was talking about we're working guys in whatever. So we're moving dudes around, and he kind of listed some guys off, and he said we're moving Cooper Beebe around. Again, I just kind of perks your ears a little bit, like, why are you moving him around? Isn't he your starting center?
Sure.
I don't know. It's difficult to envision where would you play Cooper Beebe then, because you're not moving Tyler Smith, you're not moving Tyler Booker, obviously. Beebe would have made sense as an interior lineman. Brock Hoffman is a capable center, but again, if you don't have a home for Beebe, then I don't know why you would. Only, I mean, if we're really trying to figure out how the puzzle fits, maybe you move Cooper Beebe to guard and you kick Tyler Smith out to tackle. If you're really committed to this, I just don't think that they are at this point in time. It was just a comment that caught my attention.
Okay. And I like Cornelius, and we talked about that. So is there an opportunity, do you think, in 2026 for him to be the starting right tackle?
26 is a fair thing. It's probably the last year of Terrence Steele. Even with that said, though, I don't think that it's a situation where they're abandoning him, at right tackle right now. I think that I don't even know that Cornelius is the swing tackle right now. I think that's probably Austin Richards. But yeah, I think right tackle is definitely up for grabs in 2026, and he'll be in the mix.
Okay. Let's now talk. Oh, by the way, Milton is clearly the number 2, right?
I would say he is, from the standpoint of what they paid to get him, right?
Yeah.
Or that they paid something to get him. And especially, I would offer also, it doesn't really matter, right? Like
unless there's an injury. Yeah.
Well, yeah, like in this third quarterback rule, like they're going to carry 3 quarterbacks, and how they list them is TBD. But I mean, they're all making the team in my estimation, and obviously they'll all dress on game day.
Okay. Defense. So Matt Eberflus takes over. How do you see that being different? What are the differences that you think we're going to have to keep an eye on this training camp?
I know we've talked about this before, but Matt Eberflus has sort of been the defensive coordinator of the Cowboys before. They had 2 different coaches who were kind of holding that title when Rod Marinelli officially held the title. Matt Eberflus was the first, and then Chris Richard was the second when Eberflus left for the actual title with Indianapolis under Josh McDaniels and that whole thing, and Frank Reich. And so we've learned that we can set our watch by a great linebacker play happening under his watch, which is interesting given the DeMarvion Overshown injury. And it's also interesting, when Dan Quinn took over, he brought like 4 Falcons with him, that had played for him in Atlanta. The only player to follow Eberflus from Chicago was Jack Sanborn, who is a linebacker, just again, given his area of expertise. He played linebacker, for anyone who's unaware, at Temple and, whatnot. It is kind of the position he thrives with. I don't know that we're going to see anything exotically different. I don't know that, and I don't know that anybody wants to, just because everything's been so successful. The cornerstone elements of the defense are already kind of set in place. You got Micah Parsons. They were able to get a long-term deal done with Osa Odighizuwa. Dante Fowler is back after a year away with Dan Quinn in Washington. Trayvon Diggs, when present, is a cornerstone. Deron Bland, a cornerstone. This is, for a long time, the Cowboys treated safety the way they do contract extensions for superstar players, and they just had nobodies back there. But they've gotten tried and true legitimate safety play year after year, and Dan Quinn was a big reason for that. But Donovan Wilson and Malik Hooker are both kind of par for the course dudes in that sense. So I think everything is going to be fairly obvious along the defensive side of the ball. It's just a matter of who emerges. This Kaiir Elam turned into the player who he was at Gainesville that Buffalo thought they were drafting in the first round, or is he the player the Bills traded away? Can Kenneth Murray refine that fountain of youth? Who everybody thought he was at Oklahoma when the Chargers drafted him. Like, there's all this stuff. These kind of questions. Does Savon Ravel play right away? There are some massive swings of the pendulum that can happen that can change this group dramatically.
Do you think that, because I know there are some people who believe that just by looking at the depth chart and knowing of all the injuries and some of the concerns with the hit or miss secondary, that this is going to be a high scoring team this year? They're going to throw the ball a lot. Their defense is not really going to be able to stop people. They're going to get into a boatload of high scoring games. They're going to be fun to watch, but that's basically the Dallas Cowboys in 2025. Do you believe that that is overblown? Do you think the Cowboys have an opportunity to be a lot better on defense than some people think?
Yeah, I mean, I they haven't been that group since Micah Parsons has been on the team. I know that we have assigned, rightfully so, a lot of that credit to Dan Quinn, but I mean, I would attribute it to some of these cornerstone players. Right now, some of them have come and gone. DeMarcus Lawrence is one of them, but I mean, I just can't envision a world where Micah Parsons is literally rushing the passer every single down to where, will they, are they a guaranteed top 5 unit? No, like I wouldn't go that far. But I just can't imagine them. The last year they were like this was Mike McCarthy's first year when Mike Nolan was the defensive coordinator, and they were just getting, gassed on the defensive side of the ball each and every single week. And it required the offensive output to try to go shot for shot. And the Cowboys, unfortunately, were not able to do that. And then Dak got hurt. But I think that ultimately they're going to be a solid team in an overall sense.
Okay, and linebacker though does look like it's one spot with the overshown injury for sure. That it might be a little shaky if Kenneth Murray does not do anything more than what we've seen in the past, unless Jack Sanborn does a good job. Because I think Sanborn, I always liked him coming out of college, so I think he's an interesting player. But as far as that secondary, yeah, I mean, again, I think the one thing that does stick out is Elam. He has not lived up to his draft billing, and that's why he's on the Cowboys basically. So if he does not work out, and let's say Ravel needs a little bit more time, who can step up and play significant outside corner reps and hold the fort? Do they have that guy?
So I have an answer for this, and I don't mean to be dramatic, but if you'll excuse me for 1 minute, my dog is going crazy. Give me 1 second.
Go ahead and take care of your dog.
Interesting answer.
All right. So I want to remind everybody, too, that we're going to have, and I know any Cowboy fans watching probably just don't care about this at all, but we are going to be talking about the Washington Commanders at 2:00 Eastern today with David Harrison of Locked On Commanders podcast. So you want to stay tuned for that if you want to find out what's going on with the rival Washington Commanders. And you can find out what went on with the New York Giants with Ryan Dunleavy. I interviewed him just yesterday? The days just go by. And so actually, I think it was Wednesday. Yes, it was Wednesday. So that is available on our site over at Proline TV. So check that out. Link in the description, obviously. You can find out about all of the interviews that we're going to have, and we will definitely talk about the Philadelphia Eagles at some point in the next few weeks. But Giants already Wednesday, Cowboys right now, Washington Friday, and then Eagles at some point in the future. Okay, RJ's back.
Well, talking about the Eagles is a horrible idea, but yeah, if that corner is honestly the position where they have the most dramatic swing potential, because if Diggs is healthy and solid, if Deron Bland is solid, if Elam is that guy, then great. You've got your nickel guys and you're good to go. It is worth noting, you've obviously noted it here, I know we've discussed this, that they have Deron Bland slated to play in nickel, which is where he was slated to play in 2023. Before Diggs tore his ACL, he had to kick outside and he had all the pick sixes. But this was where they envisioned him many moons ago. That nickel spot has had Jordan Lewis playing it for a very, very, very long time. And the dude who I think can come in and be the kind of pinch hitter isn't Kalen Carson, the second-year player, but it's probably Israel Mukuamu, who I know you have listed here as a safety, but he has played a lot of corner in the past. He's kind of a versatile dude that can come in. And so that's also, training camp is what it is. And I don't care about, quarterback performances. People will be like, oh, Jalen Hurts was 30 of 33 at training. I really could not care less about that. But what I care about is where players are being lined up, because we can obviously discern how the coaches envision on using them. And so I'm very interested to see how much work at corner Izzy Mukuamu is getting, because the safety position is a little bit log jammed and has been throughout his career. So if Elam isn't necessarily living up to billing, and again, Mukuamu has really only played nickel corner for the Cowboys in a pinch. But is there an amalgamation where they say, okay, plan A and B, those didn't work. Let's kick DaRon Bland outside. Let's put Izzy on the inside. And now we have a solid plan that we feel good about.
Look, I will say this, and I think this is important, especially knowing our scouts over at our lads and just what I've seen out of the kid. The Cowboys got themselves a steal in the third round with Rebel. This kid's going to be a guaranteed long time number 1, number 2 corner for the Dallas Cowboys, barring health. As long as he's healthy, he's going to be just fine. As soon as you see him out there day one, starting with the Cowboys, he ain't coming off the field. So I think there's going to be a lot less to concern Cowboy fans with who may have some concerns. Maybe they already are excited about Rebel, but if some of them aren't, trust me, the kid's going to be the real deal.
I certainly believe that. And, it is just a matter of him getting fully healthy. And again, if you follow the money, which is obviously how you can tell a lot in the NFL, quite literally in this moment, we're a day removed from the report, as I mentioned from the Dallas Morning News, of the Cowboys fining Trayvon Diggs $500,000. You don't do that to a guy who you plan on having a long-term future with, right? We've never talked baseball. I don't know how well you follow Major League Baseball, but this past week, right, there was a Nathan Eovaldi story about the All-Star game and didn't make it, all this stuff, and the Texas Rangers, I'm an Astros fan, so I really hate them, but they gave him his $100,000 bonus anyway. Just a good faith, goodwill. It's a guy who won the World Series for you, like guy who's a part of your program. Like you do that kind of thing for those players. And so you don't fine Trayvon Diggs $500,000, which is pennies relative to the salary cap in this world, if he's part of the long-term future. So again, there's clearly some vision of Trayvon Diggs is not going to be here in 2026. That is Savon Ravel's job. Once he's healthy, once Indiana Jones takes away the diamond, puts the sandbag in its place. And the other question within that is, does DaRon Bland get an extension now? He's eligible for a deal because everybody is on the Cowboys. And so do they take care of that now? We're obviously in a world where cornerback money continues to go up and up and up and up. So it would make sense to get ahead of this, but we've said that about many different positions the Cowboys ignore in the past.
Do you think then there's a world where if Ravel is healthier and plays right away than people are expecting and is right out there and ready to go, and Elam actually shows that I can play, I deserve to be out here and give me a shot, and he looked good in camp in the preseason, is there a world where they might trade Diggs at the deadline?
That's not generally their move. You can't really find an example of them doing that. I think that's a good question, right? Like if we were talking, about if we ran the Cowboys and then we were laying out like, okay, if X, Y, and Z happen, we should be prepared to do A, B, and C. Like I agree with the thought process. I have a difficult time finding a historical moment where that actually happened because they don't do that. That requires some foresight. That requires looking, to different things, whatever. And that's not their MO. But I think that makes sense to your point if you reach a place where Ravel is someone you can depend on, if Elam. But what I would offer as well, because I think, and I imagine you agree based on this conversation, that Diggs' days in Dallas are numbered.
Yeah.
But DaRon Bland is currently entering the final year of his contract, as is Kaiir Elam, because they logically declined his 5th-year option that they had to pick up if they wanted to. So you've got those two players, which again really highlights, we can discern that they're moving on from Diggs in the near future, and both DaRon Bland and Kaiir Elam are entering contract years. It's very possible that the only dude on this paper, electronically, so a year from now when you and I are having this conversation, is Savon Ravel. It could be Savon Ravel and some first-round rookie or whatever, or some free agent signing. There is a world where right now the starting 3 corners for the Cowboys aren't even on the team next year.
Do you think Bland deserves, if they had to make the decision today, do you think he deserves to be around an extension?
I mean, I think he's a really good player, but I think he has a right to ask for market rate. He has the pick 6 record, even though it was 2 years ago, right? He's done a lot of different things for them. And
would you give it to him?
I would be in a position. I'm not like I'm a genius, I know everything, but I would be in a position where Micah was taken care of a year ago and Dak and CD were taken care of
Sure.
the year before.
Yeah.
And so when this offseason began, my priorities would have been, let me get my extension done for Tyler Smith right away because he's eligible now. And let me get my extension done for Deron Bland. And I'd be comfortable paying a little bit more in March of this year, because I would have escapability on other things because I was proactive with regards
Sure.
to them. But at
Yes.
this moment in time where they still have a Micah deal to take care of. I would like them to take care of Tyler Smith. I would consider those higher priorities. And I
Okay.
would consider, even though I was against the trade, George Pickens a higher priority. He's currently set to enter the final year of his contract. And it's not visible on the screen, but Brandon Aubrey, their all-world kicker, is entering the final year of his deal. So relative to all those players and what they contribute and at their respective positions, I would say Deron Bland is probably priority number 5. So
Okay.
what I'm saying is I would have established a world where he was priority number 2 or 3 for me when the offseason began. I would have
Yeah.
never procrastinated to this point.
Yeah. Okay. Give me a camp battle on defense. Who should we be keeping an eye on if there is one?
This does kind of, get the SEO sexy juices flowing. This is maybe like a first take topic, but like Mozzie Smith's job probably isn't safe. I know you're a Michigan man yourself, and so but I know you're not shocked at this.
No, not at all.
You're just, I mean, dude, it's year 3. Like you can't just hold this job because we want you to anymore. And the positional alignment is obviously relevant and matters, but as you obviously all have noted, Solomon Thomas was a free agency addition and acquisition by the Cowboys. You're talking somebody who himself was a first round pick and a top
Yeah,
first round
right.
pick. And I don't know that he ever lived up to that, but
No.
it's still highly regarded, a
He's
savvy veteran.
serviceable now. Yeah.
Exactly.
He's a good guy. He's a good locker room guy. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I could totally see a world where, again, the 1 tech, 3 tech, things like that are critical and important matter. But where somebody just eats into Mozzie's playing time because it just hasn't hit. And
who could do that though, besides Thomas? And you really don't want to have Thomas as a starter or somebody that is going to eat up a lot of snaps. So who could that possibly be?
I don't think it can be Jay Toia, obviously, a draft pick this year. We've seen the Cowboys. This was more under Dan Quinn, but get creative. Line Micah Parsons up there, right? Like we've seen them move bodies around and whatnot. Like I don't know that's within Matty Riflis's wheelhouse. I don't know that they have the personnel to make those types of moves and be that bold. But one of the only players who the Cowboys have cut before their rookie first round contract ended was Taco Charlton. And for obvious reasons, this is very reminiscent of that. So like
Another failed Michigan player.
Right. And they cut Taco, I believe, before week 3 of his 3rd season. So he didn't even finish out his 3rd season with the Cowboys. And so again, not forecasting that future for Mozzie, but my point is, and a failed first round pick, not of this head coach, so granted he's been around and whatnot. So I do believe that there is maybe a bit of we're establishing a culture. You have to earn your spot. And I mean, of the starters you've listed, I would offer he's probably the one who's earned it the least, even counting Kenneth Murray as the starting middle linebacker. Like, I think Kenneth Murray deserves a bigger benefit of the doubt than Mozzie Smith at this point. So even though I don't have a good answer for like who would take over, the leash is that short. To be quite honest.
What it does look like, a strength-wise for this team, it looks like that the edge, and that's real important, obviously, especially when you're running a 4-3 defense. And I'm a big Ezeraku guy. We talked about that. I know he's not the biggest dude, and that's the reason why he lasted to the 2nd round. But once the scouts saw him in person and then it looked at his tape and everything like that, the kid can play. And I think that could, and now you got to get Nealon, of course, healthy for the season and Sam Williams healthy. So is that what is the hope? And then Peyton Turner, another potentially failed first round draft pick. So is there a hope that that's what this defense is going to rely on, is a really good pass rush?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you mentioned you can be excited about almost every name that they have, right? And there's high pedigree there, obviously. Micah Parsons speaks for himself. Dante Fowler. you mentioned Peyton Turner, and I think he's probably the biggest wild card on the team, right? Like there are a number, as you all do a great job of exemplifying, of offseason additions to this team. Certainly relative to this time last year, right? You've got all sorts of free agents, even if they're lower tier and whatnot, but still new faces, fresh faces, and obviously lots of draft picks. And Peyton Turner is kind of the name that everybody forgot about. Like everybody's more excited about Solomon Thomas even, or Kenneth Murray because he was a trade acquisition. But I would offer that Peyton Turner is now what Dante Fowler was a couple of years ago for the Cowboys. Dante Fowler had a nice moment with the Rams, but hadn't lived up to billing with the Jaguars. And Dan Quinn brought him in. People don't really recall this or remember this because they were together. I mentioned Gainesville earlier at Florida, at the University of Florida. That's Dan Quinn was his coach there. And so just kind of brought him in, and he really thrived with the Cowboys in that stint and parlayed it into a deal with the Commanders and followed Dan Quinn there and obviously came back. And so you can kind of see Peyton Turner being that guy. The Cowboys also had that a little bit to a degree with Carl Lawson last year, who we talked about at the time. So they've done a good job of kind of finding these veteran dudes who just didn't work for somewhere. I think we're all willing to give anyone who's been with New Orleans the last few years some grace. Sure. But so, okay. I mean, like, I feel like I'm casting a really wide net. That's how pass rusher feels. You're going to get some return, whether it is with Peyton Turner or Fowler or Marshawn Nealon in year 2, Sam Williams coming back from the ACL. Obviously, Micah's going to be Micah. So they have a platoon of guys who they're going to be able to work with, and that certainly is exciting. And that doesn't even include Donovan Ezuaku. And thankfully, his contract situation was taken care of on Thursday.
Yeah. I think the rest of the second round draft picks, I know a lot of the GMs are happy about that.
Right.
So Williams and Nealon, though, because you didn't mention them, so they're okay. They're ready to roll.
Yeah, I mean, Nealon is a second round pick, so he's still got some of that bump. This is a contract year for Sam Williams, and he's never quite lived up to anything special. Yeah. He is coming back from a torn ACL. He's had some. I hesitate to call them knucklehead moments, but he's had some moments that, were slightly annoying to people. So it does kind of feel like this might be his last year. So playing for a new contract across the league, you don't know. But to the overall point, it is going to be difficult for all these dudes to get snaps, for all these dudes to find time. And I would say that if we did kind of prioritize them, Sam Williams might be at the bottom of that list, unfortunately. But he is a talented player, and so if he's your sixth option, I mean, again, it is a rich person problem, so to speak.
Are there any players, because we talked about contracts and stuff, are there any potential players that still, like, if we get towards a certain part of camp, that the Cowboys contractually would be like, now that this younger, cheaper kid has proven himself, we can get rid of this more expensive kid?
I mean, I don't know that there's anyone that would like shock me, in that way. There's maybe Sam Williams is that guy. A few years ago, the Cowboys traded, was it Kelvin Joseph for Noah Igbenogany? Just kind of a player for player trade. And one corner for another. I mean, you don't see that happen all too often. Like, I could see it being that situation. Maybe there's a team out there that can give Sam Williams more snaps, more reps, whatever. And if Dallas feels shy at running back or whatever, I don't know. Like, okay. if you're playing Madden, Sam Williams is probably the most movable asset in that sense. Maybe you cross your fingers and hope that somebody's still in love with Mozzie Smith and you can move him. But other than that, I don't really see any kind of world where they trade anybody like that. And maybe the answer is a receiver too. I know you're obviously talking about defense, but maybe it's Jonathan Mingo or something. Those are the places where they have a little bit of a surplus at the moment. Or Luke Schoonmaker, right? Like, just kind of he might be that guy. Like, he's still not far removed. Maybe, a lot of people when Miami was looking for a tight end, thought that after the Jonnu Smith trade or whatever, a lot of people, were like, maybe this is the home for Luke Schoonmaker, and then Darren Waller happened. So,
well, I guess we would. I mean, just those players alone there, especially those Michigan players, we might have to take a look at maybe Mike McDonald. Might have to take a look at Harbaugh with Schoonmaker.
That's a really good idea. And I think people would love that, obviously. You know how it is. People will just want to get something, for what they feel like is nothing. But
even if it's a draft pick, whatever.
But those connections don't always exist, right? Like
No.
where you have those coaches who coached them at the collegiate level 5 minutes ago. That isn't always. You're generally looking for he was his coordinator here, where whatever, like Robert Saleh trading for some Jets or something like that. But that is a good comp.
Yeah, that's because I guess if someone like McDonald, I know how to get the most out of Mozzie Smith, then because I pretty sure that was I think it was his year after, but still he coached them. Okay, give me any breakout players on the team that you think is ready to take a next step. There might be a bunch of fantasy fans out there that want to know this question. So anybody that you think is capable of breaking out, offense or defense?
I think because you framed the question from a fantasy angle.
Okay.
I don't know how much fantasy you play. I mean,
I have a dynasty team.
Right. So, but if you're doing a redraft league, you've got to pay a premium for CeeDee Lamb. There's just no question. And maybe you're not comfortable, and maybe you'd prefer Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. I'm not going to knock you for that. People are going to reach on George Pickens because big name, big team, etc. But the values, in my opinion, are Jake Ferguson and Dak Prescott, specifically Dak, because you'll get the people in your league that are like, oh, he sucks, Cowboys suck. Whatever. We're talking fantasy here. Like that's the game. And you're going to get a top 10 quarterback from a fantasy standpoint again. And Jake Ferguson, a top 10 tight end. He's not going to be peak vintage Travis Kelce or anything like that, but he is going to catch, 6 to 8 touchdowns, probably have 800 to 900 yards. Like, he's a productive player when Dak Prescott is under center. So those are the ones, like, let your league mates chase Mahomes and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. Like, let them pay the premium, just stack receivers and running backs at the top, and then come back later and take Dak Prescott and feel pretty pleased about yourself. I would not touch running back. I would not touch any single one. Just, I have Miles Sanders in my dynasty league just from the past.
Sure.
And I feel awkward about it. I don't know what to do with him. So it's a tough spot.
He's going to be available late, so that's not bad. If you want to, we're always looking for those late diamonds.
Yeah, like your last pick, right before you grab your defense and your kicker. I mean, you want to throw a dart at one of these running backs, by all means, but I wouldn't pay any legitimate price for it.
No.